Hey, what's up, smart couples and smart individuals who are actually learning how to do relationships well? Welcome back to the Relationship Schools podcast here. Coming at you from Boulder, Colorado, United States of America. What's up? It's kind of loaded over here, United States. We got some issues. Yeah. In this podcast, we talk a lot about relationships. We specifically drill down into love relationships, romantic partnerships, long-term relationships, marriage, etc. We also dive into parenting sometimes. We hear from all kinds of experts around love, connection, sexuality, intimacy, brain science nerds, attachment science geeks, and everyday people. I hope you get a lot out of this. And thank you for those folks who listen regularly, share this with friends, and subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or Spotify. We appreciate you. Thanks also for those awesome reviews you left us on iTunes. Here's a quick review. Thanks, Koala Teacher. Insightful, straight-talking, passionate guy who knows his stuff and wants to make relationships better for all. Jason snags some awesome guests and gets into deep, useful conversation, and then has some amazing advice and wisdom himself. The podcast is a great companion in doing your personal work and work as a couple, and guides you to both practical, especially the action step, and food for thought that can help make you be the best version of yourself in all your relationships, et cetera, et cetera. So, Koala Teacher, what's up? Thank you for the recommendation. If you are getting value here, please leave us a review. If that's like one little mini give back, all right, just to say, hey, thanks, Jason. Hey, thanks, Ellen. Hey, thanks, everybody. Leave us a little review. Appreciate it. In this episode, I have a local friend, Joanna Shakti, who is the creator and founder of Ecstatic Intimacy. And she describes herself as a soul love mentor. She's an advanced certified Tantra educator, accredited journey practitioner, yoga instructor, visionary leadership coach. She's a former electrical engineer. And we get into her story a little bit. It's really interesting how she hung with a bunch of dudes in the corporate gas and oil space, and what had her shift into this kind of sexuality, Tantra, love coach type person. It's pretty cool. In this episode, we get into all kinds of terrain. There's 4 questions that we get into that help you determine what kind of energy you run in your life and what your orientation is on the masculine-feminine spectrum. Now, sometimes some listeners have charge around this whole masculine-feminine conversation because a lot of people think it means gender. It doesn't. Okay, I like and appreciate the frames around the masculine and feminine in my own life. I find them useful. I don't take them too seriously, but I find them useful. I notice that people have a certain vibe, and there's yin people and yang people. There's people that are really direct, and there's people that are really indirect. There's people that are more receptive. There's people that are more less receptive. So this is one way to talk about energy with people in love and sexuality relationships. So I find it useful. I'm curious what you think. Certainly leave us a comment in the Smart Couple Facebook group or below the show notes in the WordPress blog site, or anywhere else you listen to this on social media, okay? Instagram as well. So we get into this masculine-feminine stuff, and we talk everything from long-term relationship, how to keep your sex life alive. We talk about scheduled sex, orgasms. We get into some good stuff here, and I think you're going to like it. So let's dive in without further ado. Welcome, Joanna.
Thank you.
Yeah, grateful to have you here. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. I'm really excited to be here and share and explore with you.
Okay, cool. Joanna, you been on this journey for quite a while around love and intimacy and sexuality. And before we dive into some of the specifics about, what you teach and how to help people here, I want to get a little bit, the listener, I want them to understand you and where you come from a little bit.
Sure.
So We met, I don't know, a couple years ago, and you told me about kind of how you got into this. I was like, what? In terms of your background. So will you rewind the tapes and give us a little window into who you were and how you changed into becoming kind of a sexuality intimacy expert?
Yeah, absolutely. Because believe me, there is no chance I ever imagined that I would stand on stage and talk about love and sexuality and orgasms and all of those things. Like,
Right.
not a chance. That was never in my thought of, oh, when I grow up, I will.
Uh-huh.
And it really actually truthfully starts back at that time of growing up. You know what got me here? Growing up in the heart of the 70s, in the heart of the women's movement, the first divorced family on the block, so heart of the divorce movement, and all of my insecurities, honestly, that developed from having my dad leave and watching mom go through relationships and get attached to different men, and then all the conditioning that I was listening to about who a woman was supposed to be at that
Hmm.
point in time. And so there was this combination of insecurity. Am I really worth loving? Will men really stick around? And it wasn't so much men at that as I grew into my teens, it was, but it was definitely this, I don't know if I'm enough,
Yeah.
combined with this is who I'm supposed to be. And so
Right.
leaving high school, I choose electrical engineering as my degree. And I'm good at math and science, so that's what I should do. And so I get my electrical engineering degree. And last semester of college, I meet Prince Charming, 6'3", blonde hair, blue eyed, par golfer, concert pianist, you name it. He was it. And I'm like, he likes me? And I went, Okay. And I'm going to ignore all the red flags that
Uh-huh.
are there because if this guy is into me with all my insecurities, well, then there must be something there. Fast forward 4.5 years, well, I guess 5 years if you give us our engagement time. We were married, divorced, and had really lousy sex,
Okay.
like through most of that relationship. And truth be told, he could never have loved me enough for me to
Mm.
feel loved.
Hmm.
There was such an emptiness here. And then the we can get into more of the orgasmic sides of things, but like orgasm was so elusive because I couldn't trust this being, my
Mm.
own being. And so all of that, I start dating and I go into the relationship and I'm like, what's wrong with all the men? Why can't I meet a man that will meet me? Why do I meet all the sexually inhibited men?
Hmm.
And then when I finally woke up, it was like, damn, it was never them, it was me. And the real wake up call came at a moment when I was in a workshop, honestly, and the topic of the masculine and feminine came up, and those energies. And I knew the words, but I was like, I hadn't really thought about what they meant. And all of a sudden, as I'm listening, I'm like, oh, I got that electrical engineering degree. I went to work in the oil and gas and high tech industries of Houston, Texas with the good old boys in the 90s. I manned up big
Uh-huh.
time at
Mm.
23 years old. By 27, I was managing 60-year-old men who did not like it.
Uh-huh.
And so this
So you
wake
had to
up
kind
call,
of be this certain kind of woman to be able to do that, right?
totally,
Yeah.
totally don't, all of this, the stories of don't let them see you sweat, don't see emotion, don't, you got to have it all together, you be on top of it. And my last corporate position, because I obviously left corporate 13 years later. But my last corporate job, he was like, "You're a bully." I'm like, "What?" This
Wow.
is so incongruent in the sense of who I thought I was and who I knew myself to be, but that's how I was showing up in the world.
Uh-huh. And that's you were getting rewarded, I
I
imagine,
was
for
totally getting rewarded. I got
yeah.
promoted at least once a year. Absolutely got rewarded, and got the recognition, and was always, always called in on key projects. And so externally, I was getting seen, but I was also on the rat wheel of proving. And that masculine energy of make things happen, and really the bully, the like dominate. Don't let anybody see your weakness.
Yeah.
Was such a facade.
Hmm.
Was such a facade. And I was empty inside. And it was also, we'll talk about those energies, but they were the masculine repels masculine when it comes to romance for sure.
Uh-huh.
And so that was part of the issue when it came to love and intimacy and sexuality as well. Playing out those dynamics, I was pushing away the very men that I was attracted to
Got it.
because
Wait,
I thought,
let
love
me
the
catch
idea.
up here. Let me
Yeah.
catch up and make sure I got it. So
Hmm.
you go into this corporate setting, you become an electrical engineer?
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, you're in a relationship with this guy, and your marriage at the time, was he also kind of a very sort of masculine-ish guy?
Electrical engineer.
Okay,
Yep.
got it. All right. And then you're in this corporate setting for years where you're kind of trying to be a man
Totally.
because you know that that's what is going to work and lead to success. And I imagine you see a lot of women in the world do this, right? Like,
Oh, it's what I thought would lead to success and happiness. And but it's absolutely what I believed I had to do. And I see it all the time now. All the
yeah.
time now. And it wasn't that I was just trying to be a man. I was trying to outman the men.
Wow. You were that like
I
competitive
was
inside.
that. I was
Gotcha.
that
Okay.
hooked.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a tricky one because I think in some sectors of society to be successful career wise, there's a lot of kind of patriarchal sort of vibes that you need to embrace to sort of climb the corporate ladder, so to speak, right?
I
But
actually
at the expense of what?
well, at the yes. So both at the expense of what? So often I'll ask women who have climbed that corporate ladder just like me, are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you in love? And are you energized? And so often it's I'm depleted. I don't feel like there's anybody there for me. I feel like I have to be on top of everything. And where are all the men that are actually more manly, more masculine? If you that actually I'm going to rewind that, who are more masculine than I am.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, I see that all the time. And the truth is it's changing. It's changing slowly,
Hmm.
but there are more and more organizations and studies that are recognizing that the blend of masculine and feminine energy is actually what creates the most successful environments.
Hmm.
And I have had women that I've worked with who, like, just like me. I have one client that was um, owner in an engineering firm, woman. Another client who manager in an IT department. Um, Several different medical lawyers
Yeah.
and the places where we think you got to be masculine and discovering that actually when we embrace who we are where it comes down to authenticity,
Yeah.
that at that point everything changes and the respect actually goes up.
Okay. Let's unpack masculine, feminine, just because we keep kind of dipping into that a little bit.
Yep.
Explain to the listener what you mean by that, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of charge for some people here, and what do you mean?
Totally. Totally. So let's talk about those. And that was the wake up call when I heard these energies and recognized them as energies. It was there that I knew that I had to be in support of women who were going through this journey and the men that we love. And it's also true. So now let's unpack masculine and feminine. It actually doesn't matter what our orientation is, where we fall on the gender spectrum. We all embody these two energies. If we take it back to the Taoist traditions or the Chinese medicine traditions, we're really talking about what they've always referred to as yin and yang energy.
Hmm.
Different organs, different aspects of the body have yin and yang energy. And so the real key in this is to not, so many people take masculine and make it equal to male and feminine and equal to female. And they are not at all the same.
Yeah.
No matter which gender body, no matter who we're attracted to, these energies are showing up in us. And the real key, to go back to that point of authenticity, is beyond all the stereotypes, beyond all the expectations of what do we need to be, or what's somebody going to be attracted to, or how am I going to be successful, is to figure out what are those energies within me?
Yeah,
How do they
especially when I'm like
live?
being true to myself. What does that look like wherever I am on that sort of masculine, feminine spectrum, right?
Yeah, and I'll actually say they're two different spectrums.
Okay.
I actually don't make it one spectrum. There's the masculine spectrum from I'm not really engaged with that masculine energy to I'm hyper engaged in that energy.
Okay.
And on the feminine spectrum, it's the same thing. How engaged am I with that feminine energy? And there's an authentic, it's not balance, because so often balance tends to have people think equal. The two sides of the scale are resting in the same place.
Hmm.
And when we try to actually equalize masculine and feminine energy, we actually neutralize them. So it's not about a neutralization, because that actually zaps all the chemistry, but it's finding what is the authentic relationship. And so go back to the yin and the yang symbol. It's actually a great metaphor when we look at it, because if we look at the yang side of that symbol, fully enclosed in the center of that yang side is a circle of yin.
Yeah.
It is actually essential that for the masculine to be fully expressed, it must embody that core of yin. But if we look at it in a volume or a percentage, it's probably 25%. That inner yin
Okay.
is about 25% of the volume of that yang side. So it's predominantly yang with this center of yin. And then we can say the exact same thing for the yin side. And what's so extraordinary is that when we start to see what's the authentic relationship between the yin and the yang within me,
Yeah.
I can find my greatest expression and my greatest capacity for love.
Okay. Cool. So let's come back to your journey now.
Yeah,
And what did you, because you were overly, it sounds like, in the yang side of things,
totally.
right? Trying to fit in and be
Yep.
successful. And it was leading to a lack of fulfillment inside because you weren't being authentic with who you are.
Lack of fulfillment, repelling the men I was attracted to, exhausted, adrenal burnout.
Yeah.
Like there are some studies that will even tie this masculine feminine dynamic and our relationship to it to the chronic fatigues and the burnout and
Sure.
the adrenal fatigues, because at least in a feminine body, I'm sorry, in a female body. And so let me actually say something else, and we're unpacking this. Very commonly, feminine energy is predominant in a female body. Very commonly,
Yeah.
masculine energy predominant in a male body, but not always.
Sure.
They can be predominantly reversed. And there are some people that do truly fall in that neutral, more equal
Yeah.
space.
Hmm.
So again, it doesn't matter what it is. What's important is that you know what's true for you. So for me, when I'm sitting in this workshop and I'm hearing these energies, this wasn't how he did it at the time, but it was, if you put them each spectrum a scale of 1 to 10, and where I would have put the masculine energy that I was living was probably an 8 or a 9 on that scale of 1 to 10, how much
Okay.
masculine energy.
Yeah.
And I was in absolute resistance to feminine. Feminine is weak, feminine is passive. I'm going to get, I'll be a doormat. I won't be respected. All of those belief systems. So feminine, like
Yeah.
1,
Negative.
2,
Yep.
yeah, negative.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what was interesting, the reason I actually gave it maybe a 1 or a 2 is because I was actually craving it. I
Uh-huh.
wanted the man that was going to show up. And again, I'm heterosexual, so I will tend to speak male female, but it doesn't actually matter. It's whatever
Yeah.
whoever
It could be
you're
two
attracted
men, two women.
to,
Yeah.
women, exactly.
Yep.
And but I was attracted to a person who had that masculine energy. So there was some aspect of me that really knew I wanted to be feminine.
Yeah.
And so the wake up call was, holy, that's why I'm successful. It's why I'm promoted. It's why I'm divorced. And it's why I'm so unhappy and so exhausted.
Yep. Wow. So what did you actually do to shift this? Because I imagine if I'm a listener and I'm relating to you like, oh my God, that's me, and I'm a woman maybe in your shoes, and knowing that it can go so many ways here,
Yeah.
what are some of the steps that you took to shift this?
Yeah.
Because some people might be like, well, I'm going to try to be more feminine, let's say, and that's actually not authentic.
It's
So,
totally not authentic. So the first mistake I made was exactly that. I went, "Oh, what does feminine look like? Oh, she's more flirty and she's um gonna be more, give the man the lead, and I'm gonna try to be more reserved, and all these stories that I made up." So
yeah,
I took a feminine mask and put it over the masculine mask that I was already wearing, that was over top of who my essential feminine nature was. So I'm even more far removed
uh-huh,
initially,
yeah,
because it was something I thought I would do, not something I knew I was.
okay, got it.
So this piece actually 100% applies to a woman that's not in her feminine, or let me back up, anyone who is predominantly feminine
Mm-hmm.
or anyone that is predominantly masculine. The way that we get into that truth of who we are is the same.
Okay,
And it is all of the reasons that we told ourselves. We've got to bring up all the reasons that it's not okay to be feminine or be masculine. So it was, I'm weak, I'm passive, I
yeah,
won't be respected, I won't be successful. All those stories, we've got to bring up the consciousness of everything that says I can't be that, because if we don't deal with the consciousness, we're just going to put on the mask and we're never actually going to make any progress, even if we start to
got it.
discover
Mm-hmm.
who we truly are.
So you really got to go
Same.
inside and do that work.
Totally. And the
Yeah.
masculine, I can remember back, I was actually teaching a short workshop on awakening feminine sexuality, but there were an equal number, or yeah, awakening feminine sexuality. There were actually an equal number of men who were masculine that showed up in that particular workshop. And I remember this young man, he was probably in his late 20s, and he said, "Oh my God, I have resisted being masculine. I have not wanted to be a man. My father he disappeared. Most of the men that were around were asshole men. And I vowed I was going to be like my mother, and I wanted nothing to do with being like men."
Sure.
And he said, "You've just now given me a perspective that there's this whole part of me that I've been in denial of, that is actually something to be appreciated and desired, and that makes a difference and contributes." He's like, "I have so much to go look at."
Yeah.
And that's the experience that gives us permission to be who we are.
Yeah, totally. So another practical step you took, like, did you go to therapy? Did you just go to
Mm,
workshops? Like,
yeah.
did you
So, well,
start wearing different clothes? Like,
yeah, no, good questions. So this was back in 01. There were nobody, it was very rare this was being talked about back then. It
yeah,
was a little bit. So it's changed so much. There were, other than that wake up call that I got, there were no workshops. It was like, and there were very few books even at that point, really. And I ended up being really blessed with a couple of women that I got connected with who, without being coaches, began coaching me on everything from the energy that I presented, because we can really feel into the energy body and recognize through what's happening with our energy, which whether we're sitting in masculine or feminine at any given point in time. So becoming aware of checking in, where am I right now?
hmm,
And the key with that one, so let's give people that tool, is that masculine energy is a very directed, focused, linear, outward projected energy. Whereas the masculine is much more results oriented, whereas the feminine is much more of a receptive,
yeah,
creative, expressive, boundless, embracing, and even vulnerable energy.
hmm,
And so if we're in masculine mode at any given time, our energy is going to be coming off of our body. It's going to be focused. We're going to feel more like we're getting interrupted.
hmm,
And so if the energy is coming off the body at this moment, there's a masculine expression. The feminine, it's slightly harder to feel because it's a little more subtle. And so I had a harder time, but I could recognize when I was in that masculine, because I'm like, yeah, I'm in go mode. I'm making shit happen.
Yeah.
The feminine, you actually, when you rest into it, it's much more of a concave, energetic feeling through the core of the body. There's an openness, there's an expansiveness to
More
it.
receptivity.
Exactly, it's a
Yeah.
receptivity. And so that's why, again, the yin and the yang fit together, is that the penetrative outward expression meets the receptive expression.
Yep.
Again, doesn't matter what our orientation is or our bodies look like.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing was starting to become aware of where my energy was. Second thing was clearing out the consciousness that said, I can't be feminine, because I discovered at this point through some inquiry, like my predominant energy is truly feminine.
Mm.
And so at that point, clearing out the consciousness, then there was literally practice around how I stood, how I moved, how I talked. I can tell you, I'm one of those two women. She would be very intentional about me paying attention to how I was speaking. And there was one day I was in a relationship and I hadn't yet moved. I live in Colorado now and hadn't moved here yet, but I was driving through Colorado. See, it was such a big moment that I remember the details of exactly where it happened. So we're driving and we're having a, a heated discussion.
Yeah.
Not an ideal thing to do while you're driving, but that's what was happening. And so I'm talking and I hear this woman, her name was Judy May. I hear Judy May's voice and coaching me around my own voice and how I'm speaking. And I went, all right, I'm going to finish this sentence. And then he talked, he did his turn. And the next time I spoke from how she had coached me into a feminine voice. And no joke, he turned and looked at me and went, what did you just do? Because you're
Mm-hmm.
the most attractive you've been to me in a long time. And I went, oh, holy shit, this stuff works.
Okay.
And it literally was, I wasn't shoving my energy onto him with my voice.
Right. Yeah.
I
What you would
opened
learn
up.
to do being an electrical engineer in a group of guys.
Totally,
That's how you compete and
totally.
hang. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Show them that you know your stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So for you, it's like a unlearning and a waking up of who you actually were. Whereas for some other people, it might be like for me, I'm relating a little bit because I got very similar messages about my quote feminine side,
Mhm.
bad and wrong. So I buried it, repressed it, right? And then through a lot of therapy and personal growth work, I reclaimed that part of myself. And I'm definitely more masculine leaning, but I have a huge range now of that other side of me, right? But whereas you uncovered this is actually my more authentic truth. And so for another woman listening who's like, let's say she's more on the masculine side, her authentic truth might be that,
Might be.
right? It might be. So
Yep.
like for her, because I hear a lot of there's a lot of talk when we get into the sort of masculine feminine teachings and conversation.
Yeah.
If you're a woman who's quote more masculine, a lot of people say you need to develop your feminine in order to attract a masculine partner. And sometimes those people feel like they have to betray themselves to
Yes.
do that. And I'm like, I don't think there's something off there. So what are your
Yes.
thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I don't know if you're open to this, but I actually have, when I am working with somebody in depth in one of my programs, there's a lot more inquiry and several more questions, but there's 4 questions that I have found will give someone a pretty good indicator of where, if they have a predominant energy, and then which side that lies
Yeah,
on. And
great.
it tends to get underneath the conditioning and the experience and back to what's more innately true for us.
Yeah, can you
And
hit us with those questions?
yeah, I was going to say, I'm
Awesome.
totally happy. Yeah. So the key with answering these is to really come to answering them from the place of there is no judgment.
Yeah.
You get to have it your way. You are completely safe and it's going to be magical. It's going to work. You are going to be on. So it's the ideal. Answer it from
Okay.
the ideal
Hmm.
without getting any sense of you could be hurt or anything could go wrong.
Okay.
So with that, the first one is looking at your ideal sexual partner. When you picture that ideal sexual partner, do they tend to be larger than you? or smaller than you? So taller, or are you the taller one or are you the shorter one? Or is it you really see you equal? Second question, very similarly, when you picture that ideal partner, are they stronger than you, i.e., they pick you up and move you across the bed? Or are you physically stronger, i.e., you pick them up and move them across the bed?
Okay.
Third question, in a courting or a dating situation, would you prefer to be the one asked out, picked up, and taken to dinner? Or would you prefer to be the one asking out, picking up, and taking to dinner? And then the last one is hot, steamy kiss up against a wall.
Okay.
And it's always fun. With this one, it's always fun to switch spots. But more times than not, do you want to be the one against the wall being kissed or the one facing the wall giving the kiss?
Yeah.
And those are getting to what are our innate desires? And that's going to give us an indication. So let's go back. The first question,
Yeah.
if you are attracted to someone that is physically larger, taller, then that is an indicator of feminine energy. If you're attracted to someone that tends to be smaller than you, that's an indication of masculine energy.
Mm-hmm.
If it's equal, it tends to be a neutral energy.
Okay. Yeah.
Same thing with if you desire someone stronger, indication of feminine. If you desire to do the moving, you are stronger, indication of masculine.
Mm-hmm.
If you both want to do both, indicator of neutral. In the courting, if you want to be asked out, picked up, and taken to dinner, that's a feminine indicator. You want to do the asking out, the picking up. And the key with that one, for especially for the masculine, is she's going to be happy. Like sometimes the masculine will back off of that question because they're afraid they won't get it right and she won't be happy. So they'd rather she do it. But that's why the key in that one is it all goes well.
Yeah. Right. And
You knew you were going to succeed.
Yeah.
So that's the third one. And then up against in the kiss, being against the wall is the feminine energy,
Mm-hmm.
facing the wall is the masculine energy. And I can't tell you how often when I ask just those 4 questions, they go, oh, I thought I was masculine naturally, but
Yeah.
I really want to be against the wall, or I wanted to be that nice guy. But the truth is, as long as I know she's safe, I'd rather put her against the wall. I'd rather move her across the bed.
So these are cool questions because it gets to me, it's their sexuality, courtship, sort of primal.
Yes.
They get at the primal nature of us, right? Which gets below our sort of personality and how we prefer things. There's kind of an undeniable truth about our fantasy life and what we want, right?
You just said it so precisely, Jason. Goosebumps. Like that's exactly it. It's getting to that innate, almost primal that we have so many of us, men and women alike. There is so much conditioning with Me Too that men are not allowed to own, masculine men, to be specific, are not allowed to own that desire that, yes, I'd love to put a woman up against the wall.
Yeah, it's dangerous. It's, it gets into the territory of there's no consent here. Or it's fucking, it's bad news.
Absolutely. It's not safe.
Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah.
And so much conditioning that says, I'm not allowed to be who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And what's most important and why I find these questions so valuable is it's like an undeniable, as you said, an undeniable, oh, that's how I really operate.
Yeah. And I want to just, for you listening, like try to cut below all the conditioning and all the societal messages and just answer the questions as if, like Joanna's saying, it's safe. There's no one going to judge you. Like, I think that's what it takes to get really honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Like, look, you don't have to tell anyone. It's going to be your little fantasy. What's actually true with who you are? What do you really long for in there? And can that just be okay? Whatever, whatever it
Exactly.
is.
Exactly. And so that's that first moment. Like that's really
Yeah.
the critical moment is like, oh, and believe me, when I got clear in that workshop on that day, I went, oh, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
No idea. I would have absolutely been the woman that said, I am masculine. If you just asked me, no, my nature is masculine.
Yeah.
And then I went, oh my God, she's buried. She's
Yeah.
buried. Just like that young man that I was talking about.
Yeah.
His authentic masculine was totally buried.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
So, so in a long-term relationship, sex can get stale for some people. It can get complicated. It can be rife with lots of little triggers and sensitivities. How do you coach people around their sex life
Mhm.
after, like, in a long-term partnership? Because most of us can be pretty successful in the short term with a partner because it's usually free of all the shit we actually know about each other. And there's like, no, you're hot and this is great.
Yeah.
And I can just kind of go for it here. But 5, 10, 20 years in, there's a lot more shit going on.
Totally. So there's actually, I almost always, when someone says, hey, we're not very connected anymore. We don't have sex very often, or it's been years. And there's really two major things to look at. And then there can be other subtleties, but one of them is what you just talked about, is that if we don't deal with the upsets, the challenges, and I'll call it, we stuff things under the rug. And for a while, the rug's pretty big. It covers the living room floor, and we can stuff things there and not deal with it, not
Yeah.
talk about it. But pretty soon, we've stuffed so much that that rug starts growing, and there's a big pile in the middle of it. And one of us is standing on one side, and one's standing on the other side, and it's like, yeah, not tonight. And
Yeah.
I don't even know. I don't know if I'm in love anymore.
I don't even know if I'm attracted to you anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not attracted, maybe. And I'm even questioning the love. And so, huge thing is to look at that first and all of this that's been unspoken, because resentments, self betrayal, all of that, the unspoken hurts will absolutely dampen any sex drive and any love. Like,
Hmm.
resentment's a killer of love, and anything that's buried is tending to create resentments.
Yeah.
So that's the first piece.
Okay. Yep.
Then the second
Like it.
piece really goes back to this masculine feminine dynamic, and all kinds of things can show up. And for me, it actually didn't take very long back in my days when I was so masculine before, like, the hormones and the chemistry would work for a little while. But then that would fade and sex would become less frequent and orgasms would be elusive. And that has everything to do, again, with the masculine feminine dynamic. And what can happen is that maybe there was a good chemistry in the beginning, but let's say that there's a naturally feminine being who in the relationship is taking on the masculine role and making sure she or he, but managing the relationship, driving, feeling like the
Hmm.
one that has to take care of it all. And that, because the authentic nature is actually feminine, it's going to neutralize all the sexual energy.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
looking at that dynamic, and I can tell you women that are non-orgasmic tend to have challenges in this space of surrender, in the space of feeling safe in their own bodies to surrender, to be
Hmm.
vulnerable, to let go of control. See, when I get into the
And
power model
yeah.
of masculine and feminine, the relationship to control is huge.
Yeah. And leadership, right? Like, I imagine that same woman is like, if she's a woman, let's say, um, and she's starting to lead
Right?
and direct.
Mhm.
Now she's stepping into her masculine and she's doing both. She's holding both, and he's, let's say, kind of avoidant. And let's say he's more masculine leaning, but he won't step in step into leadership because, again, his own wounds, and maybe he's like, I don't want to not get it right because that's really painful and I feel shame there. So he goes into sort of this kind of collapse. um, this is like so common, right?
Totally common.
So
Absolutely.
what's the coaching there for that woman, if we're talking about kind of a male female dynamic?
Yeah.
What's the
So
coaching for her?
absolutely. So it's again, it's the same thing that we were talking about. It's her relationship with her own feminine, her own relationship
So
with her.
she's got to relax and surrender more and step out of leadership to give him a chance to come forward, or what?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And I usually will say, take it once, because a lot of the women in this space are like, yeah, but if I let go, this isn't going to get done, and that's not going to
Yeah.
get done, and
It's not going to happen.
yeah, the taxes won't get paid, the baby won't get picked up, whatever it is. And so it is taking it step by step, small step. I talk all the time about
Yeah.
baby steps.
Yeah.
Baby steps taken one after the other will take you so far. So one step at a time, what would it be like if I allowed him to step up?
Hmm.
Someplace that I feel safe enough to create space for him to step in.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
then for him, the coaching is like, dude, you got to take a risk here at the expense of maybe you're going to get rejected or hurt or blamed. But can you be true to yourself, which is you want to actually like take charge, or you want to like, you want sex, or you want
yes,
this thing to happen?
absolutely, absolutely. Plan a date.
Yeah.
Like, I want to take you out Saturday night. Like,
Yeah.
it can be that simple and that direct. And yes, it's a risk, because if there's years, as you were talking about, if there's years of pattern, it may not work the first time or the second time. But staying true to that desire to recreate something,
Yeah.
and not the old, but the true authentic expression of this moment, but it's recreating a polar chemistry, a
Yeah.
polar, because of the opposites, recreating that energy.
Totally.
It so often gets neutralized.
Okay. Joanna, I'm winding down here. I've got a bunch of rapid fire questions I want to ask you, if that's all
Cool.
right. And
Yeah.
I could talk to you for hours about this because it's, there's lots to explore here.
Yeah.
So I'm appreciating the touch in. Um, what do you think about, so if we just kind of stay focused on this couple, because a lot of our listeners, I think, have been married, 5 or 10 years and maybe longer, and they're looking for things they can do, or there's a problem here with their sex life. Um, do you, so let me just ask you a couple rapid fire questions. So if we're talking about that couple, what do you think about scheduled sex?
A possibility for sure. In that, I would say that overall, creating the space for both people to surrender into their ability to be who they are. So scheduled sex has the huge benefit of, we've got 2 hours. And one of the things that ideally is more in at least an hour, but ideally a couple hours if you can get it, because it gives space to let everything else fall away,
Yeah.
and then to have some chance to explore. And the feminine needs more time to really open into who she is. So that's a key. With
Uh-huh.
quickies, it's harder for the feminine, or late at night when she's exhausted, it's harder for her
Yeah.
to open and surrender. So Saturday afternoon, Sunday morning, whatever it is, yes, I'm a proponent overall, as long as it doesn't feel like something on the to-do list for the feminine. Because if it's a to-do, it's not going to
Yeah,
work.
not
That's
attractive.
the
That's not
caveat.
going to open my body, right?
No, it's not exactly. So that's
Yeah.
the one caveat.
Yeah. Okay. What about opening up the marriage? I'm curious to get your thoughts on, hey, we're kind of stuck 20 years. Why don't we just give ourselves permission to like sleep with other people once in a while?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, and it's a much more common conversation. What I would say is, it's not working. The scenario that you just exactly described, it wouldn't be my recommendation there, because they're not actually dealing
Yeah.
with the issues at hand.
Yeah. So
It's
it'd be
a
like an escape
way,
or a dodge.
exactly. It's an avoidance. It's stuffing more stuff under the rug, and everything is just going to get worse.
Yeah.
If a couple is in an absolutely solid space, there's nothing under the rug, the connection is strong, then yeah, maybe open up that conversation if it's authentic.
Yeah.
But what I see most of the time is it is an absolute avoidance.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. And then orgasm. What's one tip for the women listening around orgasm if they're a woman who's not struggles to orgasm, and I know this could be a podcast in and of itself, right?
Totally.
Or a weekend workshop.
Yeah.
But what's a thing a woman can do if she's struggling to orgasm and she has some shame or judgment about that?
Yeah. Well, and that's actually a huge question because especially when you bring this shame or judgment in, one, it's okay. Like there's so many women that struggle with their orgasmic nature. Like make it okay, number one, because that then creates the possibility for something to change.
Hmm.
And then the biggest, it's an inner inquiry, truly, is it on the easy side, when it's easy, it's like, "Oh, I just need to relax more. I need to create space where it actually feels safe for me to just relax and surrender and actually let go of control.
Mm.
Like that in the easy form, it can happen that quickly.
Yeah.
In the deeper conditioning, which I would say is probably more common, is that we cannot orgasm while in control. So not being able to orgasm has
And you're talking about the feminine
I am.
partner.
It's
Okay.
actually true for the masculine as well. Like
Yeah.
there is a letting go of control there, and it's absolutely foundational for the feminine. That holding on to control will absolutely keep all orgasms away. It's
Hmm.
just I have to be willing to let the energy go through my body.
Hmm.
And then it ties into safety. Do I feel safe in my own body? Do I trust my own body? And then do I trust the partner?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's a big one.
Yeah. Yeah. Huge. Yeah. And I liked what you said for the masculine partner too. Um, there's a letting go there as well. Can you just say
Totally.
another comment there?
Yeah, there's a letting go there. And then, we could ask the question, or, whether for a man, whether there's premature ejaculation or not being able to keep their erection, that also has to do with all of our mindsets
Hmm.
that we're holding. So it's an invitation to be gentle. And what am I telling myself? What am I holding in my consciousness? What am I believing? What am I fearful of? Because sometimes it's like, oh, we haven't had sex, so I just want to make sure I get a chance to come. And so, okay, I'm going to be fast and quick. Or there's
Yeah.
shame that says, let me get in and get done and get out because I really shouldn't be here anyway.
Uh-huh.
So there's a lot of things,
There's so many layers.
lot, lot,
Yeah.
lot of things in that
Yeah.
space.
What if you have two partners who are both on the masculine side, or two partners who are both on the feminine side? What do you recommend there?
That one's a more challenging one. It's not actually that common.
Yeah.
I don't find it to be that common. What I tend to find is that two people that are showing up masculine, but probably one or both are actually not staying in their authentic energy.
Hmm.
And what I would say is probably more common is where there's a neutral energy. And in the neutral energy, then it is who's leading and who's following in this particular sexual encounter.
Yep.
And because masculine and masculine, if we're both trying to make things happen, we're just going to butt heads and repel each other. And feminine, if we're both surrendered in that moment, if neither one of us is willing to take an action or initiate, there isn't actually anything that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's again about it's the polar opposite energies that create
Hmm.
the spark and connection. So where do we want to be in this moment? And even for a natural, a predominantly or naturally masculine man and feminine woman, it's where I was talking about the up against the wall kiss. And there might be that time where me and my feminine, I'm like, no, your turn.
Yeah.
And
We switch roles.
you switch roles.
Yeah.
But I don't, if I had to do that all the time, I would be turned off.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
once in a while, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's hot.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
The man wants to
I'm
be
just thinking
thrown
of,
around on the bed once in a while. That's
yeah.
hot. But if it was all the time, not so hot.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking of the pretty common scenario these days where it's a working family, right? Both partners have to work to afford their
Mhm.
lifestyle, and let's say they have kids. Those can be masculine leaning partners, right?
Yep.
Because if let's say, and let's be gendered here, where the man and the woman are working,
Mhm.
and the woman has the added responsibility of tracking all the details and logistics with the kids. Now we're talking about sort of two masculine leaning partners. But what
Yep.
you're saying is that it's possible that, let's say this in this example, the woman is actually, her truth is more feminine, but she's overriding a lot and she's not getting a lot of space to let that part of her out.
Yes. So space was the key word there.
Yeah.
Where and again, it can feel challenging to find that in a busy, like we're going, 9 to
Yeah.
9, 9 to 10, whatever it is. What am I kidding? 7 to 10 or 6 to 10,
Sure.
it's a full day. And the key, and this can come back to the scheduling, but it is really about creating space.
Yeah.
Like, the feminine needs space. And it's one of the places, again, we'll use men and women or male female relationship, but what can he do to
Hmm.
help her create space where she can actually relax
Yeah.
to be able to receive and actually feel? Because masculine in general it overrides our deepest ability to feel. The more we go into warrior mode, the more we go into that hyper masculine, the less we can actually feel, because
Yeah.
it's we're closing out the feminine, which gives us access to the emotionality.
Yeah.
So she needs some space to actually be able to feel her sensuality, which is part of the gateway to her
Yeah.
pleasure.
And she might, let's pretend this same couple has a bunch of shit under the rug. She might be kind of invested in staying busy so that she doesn't have
Totally,
to relax and
totally,
give
totally.
space. And he might be kind of invested in her doing that because he's also scared and doesn't want to deal with the shit under the rug. And right,
Absolutely.
very common.
Totally.
Yeah.
Very common.
Yeah. Okay.
Very common.
Joanna, it's been awesome. Give us just some parting words before we, ask about where people can find you. Just any last thoughts, if to the listeners here.
Yeah. The most important thing is really what I would often call, or not, I do call it ecstatic authenticity. It feels so good to be who you are. And I know that can feel really far off for a lot of people, but it's hold the vision that you can see who you are in this masculine feminine dynamic. You can see who you are in your needs, your wants, desires, your truth, your turn ons, your turn offs. And the more that you can be that person in the vulnerability, in the truth, that is what will create the magic
Hmm.
over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it is actually the thing that will solve the conflicts most quickly.
Right. A willingness to be yourself. Right.
To be in your truth and be who you are without projecting it and blaming it on another person. So come home to you over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. Awesome. Underline, underline, underline. And then I always ask my guests, if I were to get an opportunity to speak in front of 1,000 high school students about relationship and love and sex,
Mm.
and you could whisper one thing in my ear that you would want me to tell them, what would you want me to tell them?
Mm. High school students, I'm like, especially in today's world, it is discover who you are and be that, and know that if you are chasing love, and it's like, high schoolers know this. If you are chasing attention, you are chasing love, you are chasing sex, stop and come back to you. It just never give up on you. Never give up. I think that's the bottom line. I'm like, I had to find my way through that, but
Hmm.
never give up on you. Nobody else, nothing else is worth giving up your truth.
Yeah. Beautiful. Joanna Shakti, where can we find you? And what's a good link for us to track
Yeah.
you down?
So you can find me at ecstaticintimacy.com. And the link that I'd love to provide is to something that is, I call my ecstatic intimacy jumpstart kit. And there's a singles kit and there's a couples kit. And there's several different parts, but one of them is the what I call the path to soul love, and how do we really find the soul love. But then what's really relevant to this conversation is there's a set of questions
Mm-hmm.
that help you really look at, am I embodying the masculine, am I embodying the feminine, and look at both lists. Use the questions we talked about, but look at both lists. And then there are some keys to the bedroom and mistakes that you don't want to make, or how to really show up in the sexual intimacy in a more powerful and authentic way. So lots of
Awesome.
goodies in there.
And we'll put that link at relationshipschool.com/Joanna, Joanna.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So that'll be in the show notes, folks. Joanna, thanks again for all your wisdom and heart and for doing the work. Really appreciate you, and great to see you and be with you.
Thank you, Jason. Just thank you for doing your work and holding this space for people to find love in the way that is so rich and so full. Thank you.
You got it. Okay, nice. Action step. You ready? Make sure you go check out Joanna at ecstaticintimacy.com and go to relationshipschool.com/Joanna, Joanna, to get her little free thing with all those questions. Finally, the next action step that's practical that you can do right now alone or with a partner or close friend is answer those 4 questions. Okay. Rewind the episode back to that spot where she asked the 4 questions. Do your best to get into the non-judgy, super safe space and answer those questions. And it might lead you to some information about yourself. I like those questions because it's primal. It's trying to get below your intellect and who you think you should be or how you should be, and below everybody's bullshit, and get you right in touch with, what do I actually fantasize about? What do I kind of want deep in my body? What's my desire here? So I love that. Try it out. Okay. Let us know how it goes. And then, of course, come to our Accepted and Connected event. All right. We are filling up fast. We have over 50 people signed up at this point. Coming out to Boulder, Colorado. You're going to go to relationshipschool.com/connected. Okay. And this is a great way, if you're not ready for our 9-month training, this is a great way to test drive our live events and come experience us in person at a very affordable price. Okay. I think the early bird deal, I think, is still going by the time this comes out. If not, my bad. But the dates on when those prices go up are on the website. Okay. So come check it out. It's going to be a really growthful, intense, fun time. Trust me. relationshipschool.com/connected. Okay, make sure you're following us on the social media handles. All right, at Jason Gaddis, Jason with a Y, at The Relationship School on Instagram, and certainly Facebook. Okay, thanks, folks. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks so much for listening, Relationship School fans and Smart Couple listeners. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. All right, do us a favor, subscribe, share one of these videos with a friend. All right. We want to help the planet get their act together around relationships, and you are one of them, so thank you.